Mom said she's pregnant for the 7th time, but I'm done raising her kids. So I moved out, but she phoned cops on me and this happened. The words hit me like a punch. We're having another baby. My mother's 7th. I was 18, exhausted, and utterly done with raising her children. So, I left. And that's when my own family called the police to force me back home. It sounds unbelievable, doesn't it? But trust me, my life felt like a warped reality show, a chaotic circus I was desperate to escape. To understand why I made such a drastic move, we have to go way back, to a time when my own parents, Eleanor and Michael, were barely more than kids themselves. Eleanor was 19, Michael 20. Real rocket scientists, those two. We ended up crashing at my maternal grandparents' house because, well, teenagers working minimum wage don't exactly own property. Honestly, those early years with my grandparents were the best part of my childhood. My grandpa, Arthur, was an old-school mechanic who taught me everything from oil changes to wiring outlets. The man could fix anything with some duct tape and sheer stubbornness. His garage workshop was my paradise, organized tools, real workbenches, projects that actually made sense. My grandma, Rose, was like a Martha Stewart with a heart. Homemade everything, a spotless house, and she never, ever made me feel like a burden. Her kitchen always smelled incredible, and there were always fresh cookies cooling on the counter. But what truly made those years special? Arthur and Rose treated me like I mattered. When school was tough, Rose would make hot chocolate and genuinely listen. When I was excited about something new, Arthur would stop what he was doing and give me his full attention. They came to every school event, remembered my interests, and made me feel like being their grandson was something they were proud of. Meanwhile, Eleanor and Michael treated the place like a free hotel with room service. They'd stumble in at 2 a.m. from whatever party, sleep till noon, then complain about the stress of adulting. Michael would sprawl on the couch, glued to video games, while Arthur tried to teach him how to change a tire or fix a leaky faucet. "That's what AAA is for," Michael would grunt, eyes still on the screen. Arthur would ask, "What happens when you can't afford AAA?" Michael's reply? "I'll figure it out when I get there." That was his entire approach to life: figure it out later, let someone else handle it, avoid responsibility until it was completely unavoidable. Eleanor wasn't much better. She'd dump me on Rose whenever her friends wanted to hang out, never even asking if it was convenient. "Can you watch him for a few hours? Sarah's having a crisis and needs someone to talk to." Translation: I want to gossip and drink, so here's my kid. When you're 5 years old, eating fresh cookies and learning cool stuff from Arthur, you don't really analyze your parents' flaws. I just knew that life with my grandparents felt safe and predictable in a way that following my parents around never did. Then came the move that felt like the beginning of my personal war. I was in first grade when Eleanor and Michael declared they were ready for independence. They'd found this rundown rental across town and we were finally moving out. The big reason for this sudden burst of maturity? Eleanor was pregnant again. I actually felt excited. Finally, a little brother or sister. Our own place. Man, if I could go back and shake some sense into my 6-year-old self, I absolutely would. That house was a downgrade in every possible way. No more Arthur's workshop, no more Rose's cooking, just whatever frozen junk Eleanor and Michael could microwave. It was a cramped 2-bedroom with thin walls, creaky floors, and a kitchen barely big enough for one. But my parents acted like they'd moved into a mansion. "Look, we have our own place." Eleanor would beam. The yard was mostly dirt and dead grass. Our neighbors had screaming matches at 3 a.m. When my brother, Noah, was born, he had lungs like a fire truck siren. Screamer became his unofficial nickname. And that's when Eleanor and Michael started treating me like their personal assistant. It was a gradual creep, but relentless. It started with little asks: "Hey buddy, can you grab a diaper while I finish this show?" Or, "Keep your brother quiet, we're trying to talk." I was 7. 7. But apparently, that qualified me for full-time childcare. Within months, those little helps became ironclad expectations. I was expected to entertain Noah while Eleanor and Michael watched TV, help with feedings, change diapers while they did absolutely nothing productive. The worst part was their attitude when I complained. If I said I wanted to play outside instead of holding the baby, Eleanor would hit me with, "This is what families do. Don't be selfish." Like wanting to be a kid was some personal flaw. Michael's contribution was even worse. He'd come home from his part-time warehouse job, collapse on the couch, and declare himself too exhausted for baby duty. "I worked all day, I need to decompress," he'd say, reaching for the remote while Noah was having a meltdown. The real kicker was when they started going out on date nights, leaving 8-year-old me alone with Noah. I knew I was completely on my own. Picture this, 8-year-old me, microwaving SpaghettiOs, trying to get a toddler to bed, while my parents were out reconnecting as a couple. They'd leave me a list of instructions like I was some hired sitter, except I wasn't getting paid and I couldn't quit. Bedtime is 8 p.m. Formulas in the fridge. Call only if it's an emergency. Emergency? I was 8. Everything felt like an emergency when you're alone with a screaming baby and no clue what you're doing. If anything went wrong, it was always, somehow, my fault for not being responsible enough. Noah wouldn't stop crying? I should have tried harder. He spit up on clean clothes? I should have been more careful. The house was messy when they got back? I should have cleaned up while watching a toddler. Yeah, it was that bad. But wait, it got worse. A lot worse. Over the next 11 years, Eleanor and Michael decided to populate their very own personal daycare. 5 more kids joined our household, each one adding to the sheer insanity. Let me introduce you to the cast of characters that turned my life into a survival horror game. First, there was Noah, who, even at 10 years old, still lived up to his original screamer nickname. This kid could hit decibel levels that probably violated noise ordinances. He'd learned that screaming got him attention faster than anything else, so that became his default communication. Didn't want shoes? Scream. Didn't like dinner? Scream. Couldn't find his favorite toy? Nuclear-level screaming. Then came Liam, kid number 3, who earned his nickname Destroyer by breaking absolutely everything he touched. My gaming headset? His masterpiece. The kid had hands like a demolition crew and the impulse control of a sugar-high toddler. I once watched him demolish an indestructible toy truck 5 minutes after unwrapping it. Sophia, kid number 4, I called her Spitter. Imagine Plants vs. Zombies, she was the plant. Her favorite pastime was spitting on everything. Meals became a game of Russian roulette, you never knew which plate was contaminated. She'd take a bite, spit it back onto the bread, then offer it to someone else like she was being generous. Eleanor and Michael just thought it was a phase. It wasn't. Ethan, kid number 5, my tornado. He could turn a clean room into a disaster zone in under 5 minutes. I swear this kid defied physics with how fast he created chaos. You could literally watch him enter a room and count down from 10 before everything was destroyed. Harper, kid number 6, the Velcro child. She couldn't function unless attached to someone. Guess who that someone usually was? Not Eleanor or Michael, that's for sure. Harper would follow me everywhere like a lost puppy, crying if I went to the bathroom alone, having meltdowns if I tried to go anywhere without her. And finally, Chloe, the baby, fresh out of the oven, already living up to the family tradition of making everyone else's life harder. 6 disasters. Each new addition meant more responsibilities dumped squarely on me. Eleanor and Michael's logic? You're so good with kids. Translation, we're too lazy to parent, so that's your job. Here's a perfect example of the dysfunction, family dinner. With frozen pizza, because cooking was apparently rocket science. It'd play out the same way every time. Eleanor and Michael would heat up however many pizzas they thought we needed, dump them on plates, and call it dinner. If Sophia didn't like the pepperoni, it went straight on the floor, not picked off onto her plate, not offered to someone else. On the floor. When I pointed out that this was disgusting and unsanitary, Michael just said, "Kids will be kids. At least she's eating the rest." No consequences, no teaching moments, just acceptance that we were apparently living in a barn and they expected me to clean it up. Can you grab that pepperoni before someone steps on it? Public outings were my personal hell. Picture me chasing Ethan through Target while Noah had a meltdown because we wouldn't buy him a toy. Liam knocked over a display of carefully stacked soup cans. Sophia was licking the shopping cart handle, and Harper was clinging to my leg, making it impossible to walk properly. Meanwhile, Eleanor and Michael stood there like tourists watching street performers, occasionally yelling, "Stop that," without actually doing anything to stop anything. Other shoppers would stare at us like we were some kind of wildlife documentary. I just wanted to disappear, or wear a shirt that said, "Not my kids, not my choice," to avoid the judgmental looks. "Maybe you should control your kids," one lady suggested to Eleanor during a particularly spectacular meltdown in the cereal aisle. Eleanor's response? "They're just being kids. Some people are so judgmental. Lady, your offspring just destroyed an end cap display and are now using Cheerio boxes as soccer balls. That's not being kids. That's being feral animals who happen to walk upright." The car rides to and from these disasters were almost worse than the public scenes. 7 people crammed into a minivan that smelled like dead rats in diapers, with me trying to keep everyone from harming each other while my parents argued about directions, money, or whose turn it was to deal with the next crisis. "Are we there yet?" became the soundtrack of my adolescence, along with "He's Touching Me," and "I Have to Pee," and that wonderful chorus of baby crying that never seemed to stop. As I got older, Eleanor and Michael's expectations evolved from help out occasionally to "you are now our unpaid employee." Every weekend, every school break, every moment I wasn't physically in class was automatically claimed for babysitting duty. They never asked. They just announced, "We're going to dinner Saturday. You'll watch the kids." Made plans with friends? Too bad. School event? Not important. Normal teenage activities? A selfish waste of time. Friday nights became a particular source of frustration. While other kids my age were hanging out, going to movies, or just being normal teenagers, I was home changing diapers and trying to get 5 kids to bed at reasonable hours. The breaking point came when I was 15. My friend, Caleb, was having this party, just kids from school, hanging out, playing games, normal stuff. I'd been looking forward to it for weeks because I never got to do normal teenager things. My parents said I could go. I was actually shocked. For once, they seemed to understand that I needed some kind of social life. I spent the whole week excited about finally getting to hang out with people my own age without having to worry about diaper changes or meltdowns. Then, 2 hours before the party, they dropped the bomb. Change of plans. We decided to catch the late movie. You need to watch everyone. The casual way they said it made my blood boil. Like my plans were just some minor inconvenience that could be dismissed without thought. But you said I could go to Caleb's. I pleaded. Plans change. Family comes first, Eleanor said dismissively. I lost it. I never get to do anything. I'm 15, not their dad. Michael's face went dark. We provide you with food and shelter. The least you can do is help out when we need it. Stop being ungrateful. Ungrateful for wanting one night to be a normal teenager? That's when my cousin, Daniel, came into the picture. Daniel, my mother's nephew, was about 25 and the complete opposite of our family's dysfunction. He'd been watching this whole situation unfold over the years during family gatherings. And that night, he happened to show up just as Eleanor and Michael were getting ready to leave for their movie. Where is he going, dressed up? Daniel asked, seeing me in my good clothes. Oh, he was supposed to go to some party, but we need him here, Eleanor said casually, like canceling my plans was as normal as changing the TV channel. Daniel looked from me to the little demons who were already starting their evening routine of destruction. "When's the last time this kid got to hang out with friends?" he asked. Eleanor scoffed. "He hangs out with his siblings all the time." Daniel's gaze was steady. "That's not the same thing." Then he turned to me, his voice firm. "Go to your party. I'll watch them." Eleanor started protesting, but Daniel shut her down with a calm authority I desperately wished I possessed. "He's 15. He should be hanging out with kids his age, not raising yours." Boom. That was it. The first person in my family to actually acknowledge what was happening. Eleanor and Michael tried to argue, but Daniel wasn't budging. "I'm not a teenager. You can't guilt-trip me. Either I watch them, or you stay home. Your choice." That night at Caleb's party was the first time in years I felt like a normal kid. We played video games, ate pizza that nobody spit on, and I didn't have to worry about anyone's bedtime but my own. From that point on, Daniel became like the big brother I never had. He'd check in on me regularly, take me out to get away from the house when things got too intense, and wasn't afraid to call my parents out on their nonsense when he witnessed it firsthand. "You know this isn't normal, right?" he asked me during one of our escape missions for ice cream. "It's just how our family works," I said, repeating the line Eleanor and Michael had drilled into me. "No, it's how your parents avoid their responsibilities. There's a difference, kid." Having someone finally validate what I'd been feeling for years was like getting permission to be angry about my situation. Junior year brought the ultimate slap in the face. When Chloe was born, Eleanor and Michael made a decision that still makes my blood pressure spike. Instead of putting the crib in their room like normal humans, they stuck it in mine. Their justification: "You're so good with babies, and we really need our sleep for work." They made this baby, but I was the one who needed to sacrifice sleep to take care of her because they had jobs. Like I didn't have school, homework, and a future to worry about. So, at 16, I became a single dad to my infant sister. 2 a.m. feedings, diaper changes, dealing with colic, walking the floor for hours trying to get her back to sleep, all while trying to maintain decent grades and not look like an extra from The Walking Dead at school. The setup in my room was basically a nursery that happened to have my bed in it. Crib against one wall, changing table where my desk used to be, bottles and baby supplies covering every surface. My computer got moved to a corner where I could barely use it, and forget about having any privacy. Eleanor and Michael's bedroom was right down the hall, but they acted like it was in another time zone. We didn't hear her crying, they'd say the next morning while I stumbled around like a zombie trying to get ready for school. The whole neighborhood could hear Chloe crying, they just chose to ignore it because they knew I'd handle it. The sleep deprivation was brutal. My grades started tanking. How could they not? My friends stopped inviting me places because I was always exhausted or unavailable. My social life didn't just fade away, it was systematically destroyed. The academic consequences were devastating. I went from being a solid B+ student to barely maintaining a C average. Teachers started asking if everything was okay at home. But what was I supposed to say? My parents turned me into a single teenage dad? That seemed too crazy to be believable. When my guidance counselor, Ms. Green, called home about my dropping GPA, the conversation was unbelievable. "We're concerned about his academic performance. His grades have dropped significantly this semester. Is everything okay at home?" Eleanor, without missing a beat, responded, "Oh, he's just going through a rebellious phase. You know how teenagers can be, not applying himself like he should." Ms. Green, clearly confused, pressed, "His teachers say he falls asleep in class frequently. Are you sure there isn't something affecting his sleep schedule? He stays up too late playing video games, probably. Kids these days don't know how to manage their time. Video games, right? Because I had so much free time." Ms. Green suggested maybe I needed more support or fewer responsibilities at home to help me focus on my studies. Eleanor actually laughed. Kids these days have it too easy. A little responsibility never hurt anyone. Builds character. The conversation ended with Eleanor promising to talk to me about time management and study habits, which translated to a lecture about how I needed to try harder and stop making excuses. The final academic kick in the teeth came that spring. I'd been accepted to a competitive engineering summer program at the state university. 3 weeks of intensive coursework that could have seriously boosted my college applications. The program was selective, looked incredible on resumes, and I was genuinely excited about it for the first time in months. Eleanor and Michael's response when I told them about the acceptance? Who's going to watch the kids while we work? It's only 3 weeks, and Daniel said he'd help out on weekends. I countered. We're not imposing on Daniel every time you want to do something. They flat out refused to let me go. No discussion, no compromise, no consideration for what this opportunity could mean for my college prospects. I watched that acceptance letter turn into just another reminder of what I was missing out on because my parents couldn't be bothered to raise their own kids. There will be other opportunities, Michael said, like prestigious summer programs grew on trees. When? I asked. When will there be time for other opportunities? He didn't have an answer for that. The worst part was watching other kids from my school post about their summer programs on social media. Kids who weren't any smarter than me, didn't have better grades, but had parents who prioritized their education over their own convenience. They got to spend their summer learning and building resumes, while I spent mine changing diapers and breaking up fights between Sophia and Ethan. Around this time, Eleanor's sister, Brenda, decided to weigh in. And yes, Brenda truly fit her, because she was basically Eleanor's enabler and #1 cheerleader. Brenda had 2 kids of her own, but they were these perfectly behaved little angels who never caused problems. Of course, she also had a husband who actually helped with parenting and enough money to hire babysitters when needed. She'd come over for Sunday dinners and watch the chaos unfold like it was entertainment. While Ethan was destroying the living room and Sophia was contaminating the food supply, Brenda would sit there with this smug smile. "You're so lucky to have such a helpful oldest," she'd tell Eleanor, while I was literally chasing Harper around the table, trying to get him to eat something that wasn't candy. My kids would never be this responsible. When Daniel started calling out Eleanor and Michael's behavior during family gatherings, Brenda appointed herself as the family defender. "Some people need to mind their own business," she said pointedly during one tense dinner, after Daniel had questioned why I was the one getting all the kids ready for bed while my parents watched TV. "Not everyone understands family values," she'd spit. Daniel didn't back down. "What family values? Making a teenager raise your kids? He's learning responsibility. It'll make him a better man. It'll make him resent his family." The tension in that room could have been cut with a knife. Eleanor and Michael sat there like this was a normal family discussion, while I just wanted to disappear into the floor. Brenda cornered me later in the kitchen while I was cleaning up the dinner disaster zone. "You know how good you have it here, right?" she said, blocking my path to the dishwasher. "Some kids don't have families that care about them." I was 17 and tired of the gaslighting. "Yeah, some kids also don't have to be parents to their siblings." Her face went cold. "Gratitude goes a long way in this family. Your parents work hard to provide for all of you. And I work hard to raise their kids. What's your point? Your parents could have put you in foster care when things got difficult. Instead, they kept the family together. Like basic parental responsibility was some kind of favor they were doing me." That's when I realized Brenda wasn't just enabling Eleanor and Michael. She genuinely thought this was normal. The family dynamics got even more twisted when Brenda started bringing her perfect little angels over for playdates. Her kids would sit quietly with coloring books while mine were turning the house into a disaster zone. And she'd make these pointed comments about different parenting styles. "Some families are more structured," she'd say, watching Liam attempt to flush a toy car down the toilet. "But every family finds what works for them." What worked for my family apparently was a war zone. Brenda's visits became a source of dread for me. She'd always find ways to reinforce my parents' narrative that I was lucky to be so trusted with important responsibilities. She praised my reliability in front of Eleanor and Michael, which just encouraged them to pile on more duties. "You've raised such a responsible young man." Yeah, they'd raised me to be responsible for everyone except myself. Fast forward to last month. I'm 18 now, barely surviving senior year with a 2.8 GPA that should have been much higher, when Eleanor and Michael decided to drop their atomic bomb during a family meeting. "We have exciting news." Eleanor announced like she was revealing winning lottery numbers. I knew. I just knew what was coming. "We're having another baby. Number 7. Lucky number 7. The room started spinning, like I was in some twisted version of Inception. They weren't even telling me as their son, the way Michael phrased it made everything crystal clear. "We're going to need extra help when the baby comes. Good thing you're 18 now, so you can take on more responsibility without any legal issues." They'd actually thought about the legal implications of their child labor operation. Noah actually started cheering. "Another baby. Can we name it?" Liam looked confused. "Where are we going to put it? There's already no room." Sophia, with her usual charm, asked, "Can I feed it?" "I promise I won't spit on it." Harper immediately attached himself to my leg. "Will you take care of this one too?" And Chloe, as if she understood the conversation, started crying right on cue. I looked at my parents and saw two people who had learned absolutely nothing from the first 6 disasters. Eleanor was glowing with excitement, like this was the best news she'd ever shared. Michael had this satisfied smirk, like he just solved all their problems by making another minion. That's when something inside me just snapped. I was done. Completely, utterly done. I excused myself, went to my room, which was still half nursery, and called Arthur. "Grandpa, they made another mistake. I need help. Can I please come live with you?" The silence lasted maybe 3 seconds before he exploded. "Not at me. At the situation. Those idiots are having another kid? Jesus Christ, what's wrong with them?" I'd never heard Arthur swear before. That's when I knew he was as fed up with my parents as I was. "Pack your essentials. We're coming to get you right now." While I was packing, Eleanor and Michael were already banging on the door demanding I come out. I ignored it. I grabbed some clothes, my phone and charger, and most importantly, my birth certificate and social security card. Arthur and Rose showed up within 30 minutes, and I was out of there. I'd never seen my grandparents look so angry. Arthur looked like he wanted to shake Eleanor and Michael until their teeth rattled. The look on my parents' faces when they realized I was leaving? Pure shock. Not sad that their son was moving out. They were already panicking about who was going to handle their responsibilities. "You can't just leave." Eleanor shouted like I was breaking some kind of contract. "Watch me," I said, walking past her with my duffel bag. "We're your parents." Michael added, like that meant something coming from people who treated me like hired help for years. "No," I said, stopping at the door. "You're the people who gave birth to me. There's a difference." Arthur stepped up beside me. "If you treated him like family instead of free labor, maybe he wouldn't be leaving." Michael puffed up like he was going to argue, but Rose shut him down with one look. "We'll be in touch about his things," she said curtly, then guided me out the door. As we drove away, I could see my parents standing in the doorway with the kids, chaos erupting behind them. Finally getting a taste of what their lives looked like without their unpaid babysitter. Within hours of my great escape, my phone turned into a notification nightmare. Angry texts, missed calls, voicemails ranging from furious to manipulative to downright pathetic. First came the anger. "How dare you abandon your family like this? Get your butt home right now. You're being selfish and ungrateful." When that didn't work, they switch to guilt. Your siblings are asking where you are. Harper hasn't stopped crying since you left. Then came the manipulation. We've always been there for you. Family sticks together through thick and thin. But the text that really showed their true colors came from Michael at 2 a.m. Do you have any idea how much babysitters cost? You can't just leave us hanging like this. There it was. Their real concern wasn't losing their son. It was losing their free child care. The mask was completely off. Eleanor followed up with increasingly desperate messages about how they needed me and couldn't function without my help. Not because they missed me as their child, but because I was essential to their household operations. When guilt didn't work, they escalated to threats. You're not 18 until graduation. We can force you to come back. We're calling the police. You're making a huge mistake that will ruin your future. They actually followed through on the police threat twice. Both times, the responding officers took one look at the situation and basically told my parents to get a life. The first cop was clearly annoyed. After talking to me privately and confirming I was there willingly, he explained to Eleanor and Michael that I was old enough to choose where I lived. But he's still our minor child. Eleanor insisted. Ma'am, he's 18 and a high school senior. Unless you have evidence of kidnapping or coercion, there's nothing we can do. This is kidnapping. They're turning him against us. Officer Johnson looked tired. Did your son go willingly? Well, yes. Then it's not kidnapping. It's an adult making a decision about where to live. The second call, 2 days later, brought another officer who was significantly less patient. We've been through this already, he told Eleanor and Michael. Your son is old enough to decide where he wants to live. Maybe focus on the kids you still have at home instead of the one who's clearly capable of taking care of himself. Michael's face turned redder than a stop sign. This is harassment. They're interfering with our parental rights. Your parental rights over an 18-year-old are pretty limited, sir. I suggest you contact a lawyer if you think otherwise. The threats started next. They were going to sue my grandparents for interfering with parental rights and kidnapping me. Arthur, being the legend he is, called their bluff. Go ahead and get a lawyer. I'd love to hear you explain to a judge why you're suing to force your son into unpaid child care. It's not unpaid child care, it's family responsibility, right? Arthur challenged. And I'm sure a judge will be very interested in hearing about those family responsibilities. That shut them up real quick. Meanwhile, Daniel was getting updates from Brenda, who was apparently leading the family campaign to paint me as the villain. The family group text, which Daniel shared with me, was a masterpiece of delusion. Brenda, I can't believe he would abandon his family like this. After everything they've done for him, his poor mother is beside herself. 7 kids and no help. Daniel, maybe if they treated him like a son, he wouldn't have left. Brenda, he's being selfish and ungrateful. Family sticks together through thick and thin. Daniel, family doesn't exploit their kids. Brenda, you're filling his head with nonsense about being exploited. He had a roof over his head and food on the table. Daniel, and what did he have to do to earn those basic necessities that every parent is legally required to provide? Brenda didn't have an answer for that one. The best part was watching the family dynamic shift in real time. Other relatives who had been silent started asking questions about the situation. Eleanor's cousin posted in the group chat, "Wait, why was he doing so much child care? Aren't there 6 other kids and 2 parents?" Suddenly, Brenda was backpedaling. He wasn't doing that much. He just helped out like any good big brother. Daniel, bless him, wasn't letting that slide. He had a baby sleeping in his room and was doing night feeds. That's not helping out. That's being a parent. The truth was coming out. And Brenda didn't like how it made her sister look. Here's where things got really interesting. Turns out Arthur and Rose had been documenting more than I realized. Every concerning conversation, every time I'd shown up exhausted, every joke I'd made about being the third parent, they'd been keeping track. Arthur pulled out this notebook he'd been maintaining for months. Dates, times, observations about my behavior and stress levels. Dude was basically running his own investigation without telling anyone. The notebook was damning. Entries like, March 15th, he fell asleep during dinner. Says he was up all night with the baby again. April 2nd, missed his school's science fair because parents needed him to babysit. He'd been working on his project for months. June 10th, noticed he's lost weight. My grandparents had been preparing for this moment. When they called Child Protective Services, they had documentation going back months. Screenshots of texts where my parents demanded I cancel plans for babysitting duty. Pictures I'd send of the house, disaster zones as jokes, that actually showed the chaos and neglect. The social worker assigned to the case was Ms. Rodriguez. When she showed up at my parents' house for the initial visit, she found exactly what you'd expect: chaos. Eleanor and Michael tried to play it off as just one of those days and kids being kids. But she wasn't buying it. Where do the children usually play? She asked, looking around the disaster zone that used to be a living room. Oh, anywhere really. We believe in letting kids be creative. I see. And who typically supervises their creativity? My parents exchanged glances. Well, usually our oldest helps out, but he's not available right now. Not available? How? He's staying with his grandparents temporarily. Teenage rebellion phase, you know how it is. Ms. Rodriguez made a note in her file. I'd like to speak with the children individually, if that's okay. When she interviewed my siblings separately, the truth came out fast. Kids are terrible liars. Who usually dealt with the baby at night? Me. Who helped with homework? Me. Who got them ready for school when Eleanor and Michael were too tired? Take a wild guess. Who made sure they brushed their teeth, had clean clothes, and ate something resembling breakfast? 3 guesses. First 2 don't count. Noah, bless his chaotic little heart, was particularly honest. He does everything. Mom and Dad watch TV mostly. My older brother helped me with everything. The house inspection was even worse. How long has your oldest child been primarily responsible for child care duties? She asked during the formal interview. He's not primarily responsible, he just helps out. According to the other children, he was the one handling night feedings, bedtime routines, and daily care for the infant. Would you consider that helping out? Eleanor and Michael fumbled for explanations, but they couldn't come up with good justifications. The final nail in the coffin was when she asked to see where Chloe slept. My parents had to admit the crib had been in my room. So, where is the baby sleeping now? Oh, we moved the crib to the living room temporarily while we figure out a more permanent solution. Temporarily, right. Ms. Rodriguez wrapped up her initial visit with a promise to return for follow-up inspections and individual interviews with each family member. The look on my parents' faces suggested they knew they were getting screwed. The CPS investigation wrapped up after 3 weeks of unannounced visits, interviews, and documentation review. The official finding was everything I'd hoped for: inappropriate delegation of parental responsibilities to a minor child, resulting in educational impact and emotional stress. In non-bureaucratic terms, my parents were guilty of exactly what everyone with functioning brain cells already knew. The consequences were beautiful: mandatory parenting classes, not suggested, required. Eleanor and Michael, both in their 30s, had to sit in a classroom with other dysfunctional adults, learning what responsibilities you can actually give to children of different ages. Required child care education, they had to complete a course on age-appropriate household tasks and recognizing signs of stress in children. 6 months of supervised visits from a family caseworker. Ms. Rodriguez would be making surprise visits to ensure they weren't pulling the same nonsense with my remaining siblings. the house had to maintain certain cleanliness standards. The kids had to be properly supervised, and my parents had to demonstrate actual parenting instead of chaos management. Professional child care requirement, this was my personal favorite. They were now required to use actual paid babysitters for date nights and errands. No more free labor from their kids. Written acknowledgement of my rights, they had to sign a document stating that I had the right to pursue education and activities without being burdened by excessive household responsibilities. The real consequences hit them where it hurt most, their wallets and their reputation. Word spread through their social circle about the CPS investigation fast. Suddenly, other parents were asking uncomfortable questions about their family dynamics. Some of their friends started viewing them differently when they learned why their oldest son had moved out. The financial impact was immediate and brutal. Professional child care for 5 kids during their weekly date night? That's easily $100 to $150 per night. Now, they had to pay someone or drag all the kids along, which meant dealing with the chaos themselves. Michael had to pick up extra shifts just to cover the babysitting costs. Eleanor couldn't maintain her part-time schedule anymore because someone actually had to be home with the kids during non-school hours. During one particularly tense family gathering, Brenda tried to defend them. CPS just doesn't understand how close families operate. They're interfering with family dynamics. Daniel, fed up with her enabling, finally let her have it. Close families don't treat their teenagers like unpaid employees. Maybe if you'd spoken up instead of encouraging this mess, things wouldn't have gotten this far. I was supporting my sister, she defended. You were enabling child exploitation. The room went dead silent. Even Eleanor and Michael couldn't argue with that assessment. Eleanor's pregnancy became a source of stress instead of excitement. The custody threats evaporated when their lawyer, they eventually did get one, explained that any judge would laugh them out of court for trying to force an 18-year-old into unpaid child care. The lawyer recommended they focus on repairing our relationship instead of trying to compel my return. As for me, I'm absolutely thriving. My grades bounced back immediately once I started getting full nights of sleep. I went from a 2.8 GPA to pulling 3.6 by the end of senior year. I got accepted to that engineering program I missed the previous summer. They had a spot open for a spring session. My college applications are looking solid. And I've even got a part-time job at Arthur's buddy's auto shop. Real work that pays actual money. Revolutionary concept. Arthur and Rose refuse any money from my parents for my expenses. We're investing in our grandson's future, Rose told Eleanor during one heated phone call. Something you should have been doing all along. The relationship with Eleanor and Michael is permanently damaged, but honestly, I'm good with that. Some of my siblings started asking questions about why I left and why strangers keep visiting the house. Noah asked Eleanor, why did he have to take care of Chloe at night when that was parents' stuff? Eleanor's response, it's okay. Families have to help each other. But Noah, not satisfied with vague answers, shot back, but why didn't you help him with his homework like he helped us? Out of the mouths of babes. Daniel has become an even bigger part of my life, taking on that big brother role I never knew I needed. The best part? Eleanor and Michael are finally learning what it actually takes to raise 6 kids. Daniel's response was perfect, welcome to what actual parenting costs. Most people figure that out before having 6 kids. Was I right to leave?